Hey, friends, welcome back to the Embodied Faith podcast. We are doing a new kind of segment as a reflection episode based off of a previous episode that we just finished recording. And we're asking questions about what is the role of community or of joy? How can we honor the parts that we have within us, as well as self compassion when we seek to unstick our minds, when we have these thoughts that are holding us back? How can we kind of have a holistic kind of picture in doing all these things? This is the Embodied Faith podcast where we're seeking to get unstuck through a neuroscience informed spiritual formation, and we're produced by Grassroots Christianity. All right, Cyd, which is right there. Her hand's right there. Whoop. Actually, you're backwards. Let me flip it. Here we go. Zoom. If you're watching online, you can see that I'm if you're watching
audio,
on YouTube,
no sense.
yeah, we're sitting next to each other in the video. You can go onto YouTube. We're only a couple feet from each other. Anyway, so this is a more informal podcast, obviously, where we're not interviewing guests, but we're reflecting on a recent episode that we just did on how to get unstuck, how to get unstuck with your mind. And we interviewed Mamika Cooney, and she offered some good advice about how to dwell on God's word, about how to take every thought captive, and in a sense, how to kind of develop grit and kind of mental resilience, which was all really great. But we kind of run out of time, and you were like, "Oh, there's more things that could be said."
There's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about that I think relate to what she said, and it didn't feel fair to keep her on to have all these conversations. So Geoff and I wanted to just have a conversation too. For those of you that have been listening for a while and have listened to several of our podcasts and several people that we've interviewed, there's a lot of tie-ins that seemed like it would be good to make with some of the things that Mamika was talking about. So one of the things I really wanted to emphasize that I think we didn't really address was the role of community in getting unstuck in your mind. A lot of what she was talking about was, asking yourself what is true, what is not, sort of looking at your thoughts and having a mirror for yourself, which is great. But sometimes I know I talk to a lot of clients who end up in a spin cycle of thoughts and spend so much time analyzing thoughts and trying to figure out if they're true or if they're right or whether they should be thinking something different, that it turns sort of into this thought vortex. And it seems like there's no way out of that.
Right.
And so I just wanted to emphasize that, the role of community is really important here, and finding trusted partners to have conversation with, or having a spiritual director or a coach or, even just a friend, just people to be talking about, saying, I'm noticing these are the thoughts I'm having. What do you hear when you hear me say that? Or what stands out to you as you listen to me say that? Just having that reflective mirror that she was talking about, I think is so often helpful to have that be another person.
So, and that's the role of like conscious community, where you have communal discernment. Am I saying this right? Am I saying this wrong? Or I've said all these words, but then someone else can kind of pick out, and you do this really well in your coaching, when someone will say something, but then like one out of the list of like 5 items say that they're worried about, you sense in their body or their emotional tone that there's a certain gravity to that particular part. And when they're saying it, they feel like these things are all of equal value. And then you say, oh, hold on. Like, I noticed when you said this, that I saw this on your face, or I heard this in your voice, or your body kind of made this motion. And it could be a positive thing too, right? So this doesn't have to be negative. But so in community, you can kind of interpret those emotional signals, and that's kind of on the cognitive side. But then the research also says, and Jim Wilder and Michael Henderson in Hendricks, I knew I was going to get there. In the other half of the church, they talk about like the not subconscious, but almost preconscious communal values through attachment. Is that who we are, what our identity is kind of reflexively connected to the people that we're attached to.
Yeah.
So sometimes the best way to change your thoughts is to change your community, is to be around people who are well equipped at having those thoughts. Like, I want to learn to not be so negative about myself. Well, I need to be around people who spontaneously practice positive communication,
and then who can catch me when I'm speaking negatively, and who can say, I noticed you just said this, where does that thought come from?
But that would be on the cognitive kind of articulated side, which I totally agree with. But just seeing people just seeing them, it's the kind of like, it's caught before it's taught kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
I just see people responding in a certain way and staying positive or having or taking that thought captive or who knows what. So that'd be one of the things is the role of community, both on the conscious and like preconscious level. We need good community.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to do that kind of unsticking your mind kind of work on your own. So just really important to have dialogue partners and community around you as you're doing that. And then another thing that I thought of too was just the role of joy. You hear us talk about that all the time about how joy is this experience that, joy, we're designed for joy. God made us for joyful connection. Joy is the thing that fuels us and fuels our lives. And without a capacity to be able to experience joy, the capacity to be able to dig in on these thoughts and change our minds about things is just not there. And so even just this idea of like, there, even if you're realizing that you have a lot of thoughts you want to change or you feel stuck in your thoughts, I always like to start with people on building joy first,
Mhm.
because joy is what gives you the fuel and the strength to be able to address thoughts that are difficult and to do that hard work. Because without, with a low joy, with only a little bit of joy or no joy at all, it's very hard to find the energy and the capacity to do that kind of work.
And you've been learning a lot about the what's the emotional no positive, what's that, the not the EQ or the IQ with the PQ.
Positive
Yeah,
intelligence.
positive intelligence. Maybe I get this wrong, but connecting with joy, the idea that having the capacity not just to help change those, but then when you fail and you're like, oh, I've been like wallowing in that thought again. Like if you have low joy, then all of a sudden shame creeps in, and now
Right.
you're just like getting
Right.
doubled down with all this negativity. But when you have higher joy capacity, then the ability to correct yourself again to repair that thought rupture
Yeah,
is
that
there.
joy increases your resilience. And so even when you're not be able to follow through or you have the thought again, right, then you're able to bounce back because of
Mhm.
the joy.
And then you also wanted to talk about like parts and how maybe there
Yeah.
is a part of you that's really motivated and maybe somewhat capable to take thoughts captive. But then there's other parts of you maybe that are not. Is that where you're
Well,
going
no,
at?
what
Or
I
were
was
you thinking
thinking of
something
is
else?
that, these pervasive thoughts that you feel stuck in, these thoughts that keep coming back and back and back, those thoughts are generally coming out of a place where you had to develop a strategy to be able to survive, right? So if you're having a thought, I want to think of an example. So if the thought is like, I better stop talking about this before we get into conflict, right? So, like, if there's like this conflict avoidance kind of thing where, like, I really want to say this, I really want to be able to keep pushing this with this person, but I'm going to stop because I don't want to, get in trouble here. I don't want to mess up this relationship. That's a learned behavior, and it's a strategy that you developed throughout the course of your lifetime because it kept you able to survive in different environments before. And maybe it's not still necessary now. But sometimes instead of just trying to immediately shut that, to push that thought away and to be really like, it's almost like you're battling against yourself and being like, I'm
Mm,
not going to think that way anymore. I don't want that thought. I don't want to think that way anymore. That can create that inner tension that just makes that sort of parts work that we've talked about when we had Jenna Remersma on. We've talked about internal family system stuff before. You interviewed with somebody else about that too. Like that internal family systems and parts work. When you're resisting this part of yourself that's working really, really hard to do something and to protect you in some way, and you just kind of try to push it away or overcome it or defeat it, that's often going to make it worse or make
mm,
that tension even greater. And so, in some of these ways of thinking, taking thoughts captives, of deciding you want to change your mind and believing differently, that's all good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the whole process. Sometimes the process also has to be noticing a thought that you would like to think differently, but then doing the exploratory work, being curious about how is this thought somehow trying to protect me or serve me? Like if I say I'm going to avoid conflict, I'm just going to back away from this situation. What does that gain for me when I do that? Well, it keeps me comfortable, right? It keeps giving me this illusion of connection, even if I don't feel deeply intimate with this person. At least I still have this, like, we're not yelling at each other, at least. And so just sort of understanding that that's where that might come from and recognizing, okay, it's clear that I want to be comfortable. I want to be in relationship. I want there to be harmony in my life.
mhm.
But recognizing that. And so when that thought comes up of, I don't want to get into this, recognizing that, oh, okay, there's that thought again that's trying to keep me in this place of not wanting to get into conflict and not wanting to be comfortable. I can hear that. And I can decide, what do I value more, being
Mm-hmm.
comfortable and staying out of conflict, or really having deep relationship. And then once that has sort of been listened to and been curious about, then you can move into, trying out something new.
Yeah.
But I think that, sometimes we have, in the Christian culture and in the, we often have this sort of triumphalism of, we just need to overcome, and we do have the power to overcome. I'm not saying we can't
Amen.
overcome, but sometimes that overcoming energy doesn't feel very gentle or kind. And I think sometimes we can beat up on ourselves and be at war with ourselves rather than having that compassion and tenderness of, this thought is here because it's been doing good for me, or it's been trying, it thinks, I think I'm protecting myself this way.
Yeah.
And then going back to joy, right? Joy is what makes us feel safe in the first place. Joy is what gives us that strong foundation of connection, that helps us weather things that feel uncomfortable or feel like they're, causing conflict or disharmony in our relationships.
And that way, like as you're saying that, I'm thinking that that would be a great way to keep from doing like the pendulum swinging, where we kind of go from like, oh, this is bad, I'm going to go way over there and focus on these other good thoughts. But if you haven't done that work that you were saying of like investigating so that you can integrate those different parts of you and have compassion, at least for why that's happening, you'll probably do the pendulum swinging. But if you can have integration, have compassion, then at least you can carry those good things in with you, couple them with other good things, and now you're moving forward in a really productive sense, rather than maybe in a year or two finding like just you're burned out in a totally different way or something like that. So, well, did you have one or two more thoughts,
Yeah,
or
it
are we
just
going to
makes me.
land it now?
Well, one more thought.
Okay,
Do we have
one more
time
thought.
for
We
one
have,
more
yeah,
thought?
we got all the time in the
Okay,
world now.
so there's a coach that I really admire. His name is Jim Trulevin, and he talks about context versus content. And so, what you're just talking about, if you don't do that inner work of figuring out what this, doing that curiosity of where is this thought coming from and how is it serving me, you're trying to fix the content of the thought without addressing the context, which is you and your whole internal world and your internal life and your life story. And like, it's all of you, right? So the content is the thought itself. The context is you, and your world. And so if all you're trying to do is change the thought, the little content, but you're not doing anything to change the context, which is your level of joy, which is your, your supportive community, which is your resilience, your capacity to be able to handle, your ability to regulate, all of that is your context. And so just dealing with thought by thought without dealing with the context really is just going to keep getting you stuck in the same places over and over again.
Yeah, so true. So to sum up then, of course,
it's Jim Dethmer, by the way. I said Jim Trulevin. I was mixing people up.
All right, but the other guy's great too, though, right?
Yeah, David Trulevin's great too.
And hopefully we'll have more of those people on the episodes as interviews. So when it comes to taking thoughts captive, of course, we want to emphasize our agency. We have agency over our thoughts. And so there is kind of a capacity for using and exercising our willpower. But as the research shows, willpower only gets you so far, and it's not super far. What you really need is an attached, trusted community, people who are modeling other ways of living and being, that you're both catching by being around them. And then you're also kind of in a community of correction, of being able to mid-course correct as you go. And then even the level below that is just the neurological connections of joy and the capacities for joy to both do that hard work of self-reflection as well as to recover when you blow it. And then it's not a deeper level, but is the idea of just like the global context and being aware of that, so that when we are making these switches, we're getting down to the deepest roots. So we just wanted to spend a little bit of time offering that quick reflection. So like I said before, we're trying to move into a space where our episodes will have interview episodes, then a reflection episode like this, and then moving forward, sometimes Cyd will offer like a practice episode where she will just a real short one, 3 to 5 minutes, where she just guides you through. So be looking for those on future upcoming episodes of the Embodied Faith podcast, which you can get on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, all the other places. And you can usually watch on Facebook and Twitter. So any last thoughts before I hit the end broadcast button?
No, you're just talking really fast.
I know, of course, I'm talking really fast because it's like at the end of the commercial where they want to give you all the health
All the
benefits,
side
but it might
effects.
kill you. This podcast will probably not kill you. It should not. I don't see how anything we said will kill you. All right. Until next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.